The humid air of Lomé clung to the skin like a second shadow. Kossi, the city's most coveted fabric designer, stood amidst rolls of shimmering kente and imported silks. His goal was simple: to win the Golden Needle at the Grand Gala of Togo. For years, his rival, the elegant but ruthless Madame Celine, had held the title. She was the hair of the fashion world, fast, trendy, and loud. Kossi, however, was the tortoise. He moved with a deliberate, agonizing slowness that many mistook for a lack of ambition. But Kossi had a secret. He wasn't just sewing clothes, he was weaving a trap. In the back of his workshop, away from the prying eyes of the Grand Marché, he worked on a gown made of bioluminescent thread sourced from the deep forests of Lome. It was a masterpiece of patience. While Celine spent her weeks hosting lavish parties and leaking fake sketches to the tabloids to stir up hype, Kossi sat in silence. He hand-stitched every microscopic bead, ensuring that each one caught the light at a specific angle. The scandal wasn't in the design, though. It was in the fabric's history. Celine had recently acquired a rare batch of royal silk, claiming it was a gift from a distant queen. Kossi knew better. He knew exactly where that silk came from, and he knew it carried a curse of visibility. He waited, moving slowly, letting her arrogance bloom. As the gala approached, the whispers in the salons of Lome grew deafening. Celine's gown was rumored to be a tribute to the sun, a blinding gold creation that would render all other designers obsolete. Kossi remained a ghost. He declined every interview and locked his doors. The local magazines called him the recluse of Rue de la Paix, mocking his slow pace. They laughed of his tortoise reputation, predicting he wouldn't even finish his entry before the midnight deadline. Celine, fueled by champagne and ego, visited his shop one evening. "Speed is the essence of genius, Kossi," she purred, her heels clicking on the hardwood. "You are still on the sleeves, and I'm already on the finale." Kossi didn't look up from his needle. He simply nodded, his fingers moving with a rhythmic, hypnotic precision. He let her see the dullest part of his work, a decoy shroud of gray wool. She left, satisfied that her victory was sealed, but as soon as the door clicked shut, Kossi pulled the gray wool away to reveal the bioluminescent silk underneath. It didn't just glow, it breathed. He had spent months cultivating a specific enzyme that reacted to human sweat. The more nervous or excited the wearer became, the more the fabric would change. He wasn't just making a dress, he was making a lie detector, and he knew Celine had a secret that would make her very, very warm. The night of the Grand Gala arrived with a tropical thunderstorm that cleared just in time for the red carpet. The elite of Togo gathered, their outfits a riot of color against the damp pavement. Celine arrived first, a vision in stolen gold. Her dress was magnificent, but as she moved, the air around her seemed to vibrate with a strange metallic scent. She was the star, the hair crossing the finish line before the race had even begun. Kossi arrived last. He didn't come in a sleek car. He walked, carrying a single wooden box. When he entered the hall, the music skipped. His model, a woman of ethereal grace named Amavi, stood behind a curtain. The audience waited, impatient for the tortoise to show his meager offering. Celine smirked from the front row, her gold dress shimmering under the spotlights. "I present to you the truth of the forest," Kossi announced, his voice a low baritone that commanded the room. Amavi stepped out. At first, the dress looked like simple black charcoal. The crowd sighed in disappointment. Celine let out a theatrical laugh. But then, Kossi signaled the technicians to dim the house lights. The room fell into a velvet darkness. Slowly, one by one, the beads on Amavi's dress began to pulse with a deep, rhythmic violet light. It was as if a galaxy had been draped over her shoulders. The silence was absolute. The judges leaned forward, mesmerized. The slow designer had produced something that defied the laws of optics. But the real scandal was about to unfold. Kossi's fabric was designed to sync with the thermal signatures of those nearby. As Amivi walked past Celine, the violet light shifted. It turned a sharp, accusatory crimson, reacting to the intense heat radiating from Celine's stolen gold silk. Celine's dress began to hum. It wasn't a pleasant sound, it was a low, grinding vibration. The royal silk she wore was actually a synthetic industrial mesh stolen from an experimental textile lab in Anaheim. It was never meant to be worn against skin. Under the intense heat of the gala spotlights and her own rising anxiety, the gold coating began to melt. It didn't drip, it evaporated into a thick neon green mist that smelled of burnt sugar and ozone. The crowd gasped. The queen of fashion was literally dissolving in front of them. The green mist reacted with Kossi's violet beads, turning the entire stage into a swirling kaleidoscope of chemical reactions. Kossi stood perfectly still, his hands folded. He had known the chemical composition of her stolen fabric for months. He had waited for this exact moment of thermal peak. The tortoise hadn't just finished the race, he had turned the track into a furnace for his opponent. The green mist cleared, leaving Celine standing in nothing but her structural undergarments, her gold dress a puddle of toxic sludge at her feet. The scandal was instantaneous. The audience didn't see a victim, they saw a fraud. The metallic scent confirmed the theft of the experimental mesh, a secret Celine had kept to bypass the high costs of genuine silk. She was ruined, her reputation dissolving faster than her hemline. Kossi stepped onto the stage, his model still glowing with that calm, steady violet light. He looked at the judges and spoke with a chilling serenity. True beauty takes time to grow and even longer to protect. Shortcuts lead to short-lived glories. The room erupted into a standing ovation. The golden needle was his. The tortoise had won, not by being faster, but by knowing exactly when the hare would trip over her own greed. But the twist was deeper. As Kossi accepted the trophy, a small, elegant woman stepped from the wings. It was the lab director from Anejo. She didn't look angry, she looked appreciative. She shook Kossi's hand and whispered, "The experiment was a success." The crowd thought Kossi was a victim of Celine's rivalry, but the truth was more scandalous. Kossi had planted the stolen silk in Celine's path. He had used her as a live test subject for his chemical reactive dyes. The gala ended, but the night was far from over. In the quiet of his workshop, Kossi sat with the lab director. The scandal was the talk of every dinner table in Lome, but the real story was in the documents on Kossi's desk. He hadn't just won a fashion award, he had secured a multi-million-dollar contract to develop intelligent camouflage for the National Guard. The designer was in fact a brilliant chemical engineer who would use the fashion world as his laboratory. Celine was irrelevant now. She was a mere data point in his research. He had known she would steal the most expensive-looking fabric he accidentally left in a shared warehouse. He had known she would use it for the gala. He had calculated the exact wattage of the spotlights needed to trigger the dissolution. Every move was a gear in a machine that had been turning for 3 years. "You played the part of the slow, struggling artist perfectly," the director remarked, sipping a glass of palm wine. Kossi smiled, a thin, sharp expression. "The world ignores the slow. They find us boring, and while they are bored, we are busy measuring the distance between their pride and their fall." He looked at the golden needle trophy. It was a nice trinket, but the real prize was the patent for the violet thread. The aftermath was a whirlwind of social upheaval. Celine attempted to sue, but the evidence of her theft was literally baked into the floorboards of the gala hall. She was exiled from the high society of Togo, forced to close her boutiques. Meanwhile, Kossi's brand became a global phenomenon. People wanted the truth fabric. They wanted clothes that reacted to the world, clothes that held secrets. But Kossi wasn't interested in mass production. He remained in his small shop, the tortoise in his shell. He turned down offers from Paris and Milan. He had achieved his goal, absolute control over his craft and his environment. The scandal had cleared the field of his only rival and provided the funding for his true passion, textile-based technology. He was now the most powerful man in the industry, yet he still walked to the market every morning. He still spent 10 hours on a single hem. The city watched him with a mix of awe and fear. They realized that his slowness wasn't a lack of speed, it was a lack of waste. He never missed a stitch because he saw the entire garment before he even picked up the needle. The tortoise was a predator, and the fashion world was his hunting ground. A year later, Kossi stood on his balcony overlooking the Gulf of Guinea. The waves crashed against the shore with a steady, relentless rhythm, nature's own version of his philosophy. He was preparing his next collection, but this one wouldn't be for a competition. It was for a private client who required a suit that could disappear in plain sight. He picked up a small, shimmering beetle from a leaf on his balcony. He studied its shell, the way the light fractured into 1,000 colors. "Almost there," he whispered. He had used the scandal to build a fortress of privacy. No one dared to interrupt him anymore. No one dared to call him slow. They knew that when Kossi finally moved, the world changed its shape to accommodate him. The golden needle sat on his mantle, gathering a fine layer of dust. He didn't need the trophy to remind him of his victory. He needed only to look at the empty space where Celine's boutique used to stand across the street. He had reached the finish line long ago. He was just waiting for everyone else to realize the race was over. He picked up his needle, the silver flashing in the sun. He began to sew, one slow, perfect stitch at a time, the master of his own time.
I kindly plead with our first-time viewers to kindly subscribe to our channel. And to our dearest subscribers, thank you for joining us again. Please help to like, drop a comment, and click on the notification bell to always get our new videos. Thank you.